Yes, the Lord is risen today.
This weekend, we close out our celebration of the octave of Easter with Divine Mercy Sunday. You know, a particular celebration that grew out of the devotion and openness of Saint Faustina Kowalska in Poland in the early to mid 1900s. It's a beautiful, cap on this Easter week. As if our celebration of Easter Sunday itself wasn't about mercy, we hammer it home this weekend. Our readings only further supply, opportunities to enter in. A reminder that mercy itself is to give one's heart to the miserable. That's what God is about, giving His very heart to us in our mercy or in our misery. For Thomas, that was his experience, the darkness of his own heart, almost, I would say, carrying through, the promise and the promise of Jesus when he shows up to Mary in her, Mary Magdalene, in her darkness at the tomb, the promise that he would show up again and again in those places of darkness. He carries that through the next week to Thomas in his doubt, or I don't even think it's doubt. I've said this over and over again. It's not doubt. It's almost just, his heart is so raw at the grief that he experiences at the loss of Jesus that he just doesn't want to risk it again in putting himself out there. So what does Jesus do? He comes to him and reveals to him the glory of the wounds that he has borne. We take it back through the letter of St. Peter and what he shares with the community that he is nurturing in faith, and letting them know that to live with the Lord and give yourself over to Christ isn't so much that all of your trials and all of your troubles are passing away, but that you may yet have to go through some, so that your faith may be purified, so that you may know a deeper presence of the Lord, and ultimately hold so tight to the promise of the Lord in the coming of His kingdom, that you live your life with an indescribable joy, he says, even in the midst of those challenges. Why? Because you know that the Lord has given you His heart. He's given you His heart even in those places of misery. And not to be remiss, if I don't mention the reading from the Acts of the Apostles. This is such the highlight of this whole Easter season, and in some ways is its own invitation to enter more deeply into the communal life of the church during this season, and let it be a time of renewal in our lives as well. We continued this weekend deepening our sense of experience of God's mercy, but let's continue this season entering into the experience of the early apostles and the early church being renewed and strengthened by the grace and mercy of Christ. Just a shameless plug, over the course of the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be taking our journey through the Acts of the Apostles and opening it up in scripture study and also reflection on how God has already renewed our own hearts, turned our world upside down by His grace and mercy, and giving us a little hope for how we can be like the disciples in the early church and turn the world on its head as well as we go forth and live our faith. So encounter God's mercy today, encounter His renewal throughout this entire season of Advent. Good gravy. Where are we? Easter. Enjoy. God bless.